Welcome into the Locked On Knicks podcast. I'm Gavin Schall, and today I'm lucky enough to be joined by Ariel Pacheco to tell you some of the more interesting lineups the Knicks could put on the floor, their best rebounding unit, their best zone defense unit, their best overall defensive unit, before getting into the players that have most haunted the Knicks past, present, and future. All that and more right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, and today's episode is brought to you by none other than PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. And we wanted to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day. We're now available on all platforms, including on YouTube. So go check us out there. Throw us a subscription, throw us a like, throw us a comment, see our smiling faces day in and day out. But who's talking to you? I'm Gavin Schall, a play-by-play broadcaster, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. And I'm lucky enough to be joined by Ariel Pacheco. You might have listened last week when we put out part one of this mailbag, but he is elite. No other way to phrase it. Just flat out one of the best observers of this team out there. Small caveat on this one. We recorded it, I think it was last Monday. So that was before the Obi Toppin injury, before Cam Reddish got banned from the rotation, before the latest Julius Randle explosion. So with all those notes, I still think this episode is highly, highly relevant and really interesting because we get into the nitty gritty talking about why certain units make up the Knicks' best lineups, including a pretty cool conversation about what makes Quentin Grimes and Mitchell Robinson such a special defensive duo. So I won't delay it any longer. Here we go with Ariel Pacheco. All right, guys, as promised, we are joined once again by Ariel Pacheco. Check him out on Twitter at @PachecoNBA. If you're watching on YouTube, you already see his graphic. You already see his smiling face. Ariel, thanks for joining me again, man. Let's keep it rolling, swinging right into part two of this mailbag. And man, do I have a name for you? This question comes from Carlos Spicy Wiener. I don't know if there's an apostrophe on that first S, but I don't want to. I'm gonna assume no. Hopefully he's just a fan of the food. I don't know. Let's not explore that too much. This is a PG show. He's at his handle's at Knicks Papa. I can't win with this guy. He wants to know. Let's forget trade talks. Assuming the current roster. All right. So he has 4 different questions. So okay. I'll throw them at you one at a time. Which players would create the best rebounding and perimeter defense lineup?
Yeah, this one was tough. This one was tough just because, like you touched on it in the first part where there's no like perfect solution. Like anybody you kind of put in the game is like a little bit of a drawback. So the answer I went with is mostly similar to my answer to the question in part one of the best defensive lineup. It's Grimes, it's Quickly, it's Mitchell Robinson, it's McBride as well, and it's Julius Randle. So the reason why I went with this unit is because I think you get the perimeter defense from McBride, Grimes, and Quickly. And if you do get the engaged Julius, that's obviously a plus. But even if you don't, I think those 4 guys can cover for Julius. And then in terms of rebounding, I think the three guards, they're very good at rebounding. They're probably in like the top five best rebounders on the team, even though they're all guards. I just think that Robinson is also an elite box out guy, so I think he's like an automatic insertion. And I think Julius is pretty good at grabbing uncontested rebounds when Mitchell Robinson is boxing out. So I think those 5 guys can kind of cover for each other and their weaknesses and aspects. And then I think that's the best. For me, that was the best lineup I could come up with.
Yeah, I had the exact same one. And I think I agree with everything you said. I think this isn't part of the question, but I was kind of keeping in the back of my mind, like, all right, would this be the worst offense in the NBA? And the answer is maybe. But if Deuce could start making threes, and I think he's 1 for 15 from 3 this year, while a season ago in the G League shot like 40% from 3 on 8 attempts per game. So I think that will come around eventually. And in a world where he was playing 20 minutes a night, like he would be a pretty good shooter. I don't know about you. I'm dying for a lineup where IQ can get more on-ball reps as the lead ball handler, and I think that's where he really succeeded last year. And even these last two games, and particularly last game with Rose out, like I think he looked a lot more confident attacking the rim, just almost knowing like if I screw this up, there isn't going to be that internal pressure to be like, all right, let me throw it to the MVP next to me to take a shot at it. I guess this is kind of like a pivot within the question, but like, is that something you would try to get to a little bit more if you were the Knicks? Like IQ is, I mean, obviously Deuce can handle a little bit. Randall would handle a little bit in that lineup, but like IQ is nominally like the guy handling the basketball in a lineup.
Yeah, I'm pretty high on IQ. I'm pretty high on how fast he's kind of improved in all his areas that when he came into the NBA, he was pretty like weak at. Just getting to the rim, you saw it last night against the Cavs. And then overall, I just think that if you give him more reps, he's shown that he'll figure it out, even if there is a little bit of a bump. And if the shooting does come back to like where I think most of us expect where it can get to, I think he's a real legitimate guard that you can run offense through. And I think an underrated aspect of this too is that I think it'll give Grimes a little bit more on ball reps, which I'm very curious to see more of. We see how good he is at attacking closeouts and like second side actions and getting to the rim and finding bigs for dump off. So I'd love to see him with a little more added responsibility and rather see if he sinks or swims with it.
Yeah, I'm with you on both of them. I think a key quickly stat that I saw floating around today. I mean, up to 50% from 2-point range after shooting 40% as a rookie, 45% his second year. To me, that is kind of the ultimate indicator that he's ready for more responsibility offensively, even as his 3-point shot, like he kind of struggles to recapture the heights of his rookie year there. I think more of an opportunity to just have the ball in his hands and get into a rhythm would be good. And then Grimes, man, I'm so fascinated with him because I just think there's still so many directions his career could go where like the baseline with him. And I know I'm just reading pretty much everything you tweet. Like you're kind of on the same page here, but the baseline is like super elite role player, like possibly like a starter on like a championship type of team, like with the right kind of stars around him. And the question is like, which the Knicks should be exploring in earnest and aren't really because of the construction of their team is there a higher ceiling? And where those reps would really come in handy is I think right now on closeouts and just in scramble situations, you see him predetermining his reads a lot. And I think that's messed him up on drives where he's not super confident in his shot right now. And he's just saying, go to the rim every time. And I'm wondering if he got more reps kind of as he got in summer league where he was the number one guy, where he could just make those decisions over and over again. And like, even if he struggled for 20 games, like would he come out of that as someone who you could say right down the road, he could be like, I don't know, something a little closer to Desmond Bane than Danny Green offensively.
Yeah, that would be huge. The gap between those kinds of role players is massive. That's the difference between a guy who's going to make $20-25 million a year versus
at least
12, 14-ish. So yeah, I just think Grimes has a really good burst. I don't think we talk about his burst enough when he is attacking closeouts. I'd love to see it. I think his handle it looked better in summer league, but I'd love to see it like expand a little bit more. I think that's the one thing holding back from more on ball stuff. But I'm usually very happy with his decision making.
Yeah, I'm with you, and it's painful, but I'd love to see it. All right, second question from at Knicks Papa. Somehow the least offensive of the two names there. Would a big lineup that implements Zone D be better suited for the Knicks personnel? So this is something I was arguing preseason that I would like to see a lineup that featured Grimes, RJ, and Cam quite a bit. That is not a lineup that's a lineup that has hardly played at all this season because for whatever reason Tibbs has largely treated Grimes and Cam as either or, and now he's made that seemingly more permanent, and at least for the time being. Again, apparently, who knows? It could change in a game. It could change in 10 minutes from now. Removing Cam from the rotation, but I want to see like that kind of switchability. And to me, especially around Jalen Brunson, that's how I would plan the future of the team, barring a world where Obi is a superstar, which has looked less and less likely recently. So the version of that lineup I came up with that would be interesting. Like didn't really have a true point guard in it, where you had Grimes as a nominal point guard, RJ, Cam, Julius, and Jericho. And I don't really think Grimes is ready for that yet. But and offensively, you'd have some real issues in terms of initiation and stuff. But I figured the Knicks survived with Elfrid Payton as a point guard for a year. So how bad could Quentin Grimes be? And that would kind of get to, I think, what Knicks Papa is getting at in terms of he's saying a zone D. I guess I was thinking more of a switch D, but I don't know. What would you think about like putting that much size on the floor at the same time for the Knicks? All right, guys, when we come back with Ariel, we will get into the Knicks' best overall lineups on both offense and defense. But first, I got to tell you about PrizePicks. Tonight, I am taking RJ Barrett. Well, tomorrow night is when they play. So tomorrow night, I'm taking RJ Barrett to score over 23.5 points. I think he's going to continue his hot streak. I'm taking Julius Randle over 7 rebounds. I'm taking Emmanuel Quickley over 5.5 assists. So how does it work? All you have to do is pick 2 to 6 players, and if they go score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 25 times in any entry. That's a crazy number. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. PrizePicks offers projections on any sport that you watch. That includes the NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, men's college basketball, women's college basketball, soccer, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, disc golf, Euro basketball, cricket, and more. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. Safe and fast withdrawals currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. So download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. So don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100.
I think I'm always for like just trying crazy stuff, throwing things at a wall. Sometimes things stick, and you end up like figuring out something that you would have never found if you didn't just try something. I definitely think zone, just to touch on that, I think zone defense can work in small spurts, like to throw teams off. But I definitely don't think it's like something you make your base defense off of. That's why most teams don't do it, because after a few possessions, it gets solved. But I agree 100% on the switching. They have a lot of switchable personnel on the team, and it's kind of shocking to me that they don't do it a lot more. Like just Jericho Sims at center is freakishly can legitimately switch 1 through 5, and I know we say that to a lot of people, but it's real with him. And then quickly Grimes, McBride, Cam, all those guys very switchable as well. And if you get the engaged Julius, he's very capable as well. And then RJ, if RJ was ever to kind of find his defensive acumen that he had earlier in his career, when I was pretty high on his defense, but I have been disappointed with like the past season or two. That he'd be perfect as well. So I definitely think there's a lot of personnel, and Mitchell Robinson, he's done a couple of late switches of late that have kind of like piqued my interest, because he was very good at switching earlier in his career, but then the foot injury kind of held him back. But I think like on late switches he could be effective too. So I'm all for the switching. I think they should be doing a lot more of it actually.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful with Julius in particular, not only because he's, I mean, just skill set wise better suited for that type of defense, but a lot of, I mean, everyone knows that clip circulating around Knicks Twitter of him getting switched onto Mitchell and then forgetting about it, and Mitchell popping out for the left side wide open quarter three for maybe like the third best 3-point shooter on planet Earth right now, but we don't have to belabor the point. But anyway, but the argument would be, I almost think it would be like, obviously you have stuff where off ball it could get tricky, as it did in that situation, but I think it would be really good for Randle to be put into the spotlight defensively, because weirdly enough, I do think there's some pride there, and that's why he gets so defensive when he completely loses his guy, and you see him like pointing at Emmanuel Quickley. Even if Emmanuel Quickley was in the crowd, he would be like, what are you doing? Why weren't you on the court? We needed a 6th man. And I almost think like his kind of manhood would be on the line more if you lined him up with guards more. And to your point earlier, he's very good at it when he cares and when he's engaged.
Yeah, when he takes it, you can tell when he's taking a matchup personally, like against KD, for example, like he's trying his hardest. But yeah, again, if you get engaged Julius defensively, it's legitimately like a difference maker, especially like not even going off hypotheticals, but the actual like starting lineup. If Julius just becomes like a neutral defensively and he's not actively tanking your defense, it helps so much, because they already have negatives in Brunson, who's limited by his size, and then RJ, who's been struggling on that end. So if either RJ or Julius can figure just to get to neutral, if both of them did, it'd be massive for what they could do defensively. Because I really like what Grimes and Mitchell Robinson have been doing together defending the pick and roll.
Yeah, I actually want to ask you about that, because it's something that hasn't come up on the pod, but it's something I've noticed where, I mean, just the chemistry those two have is pretty incredible, given that they haven't played a lot together. And like, I mean, as you know, there's a real dance to that in the NBA. And usually the teams that are best at it are teams that have played together a long time. And when you have like a Klay Thompson and a Draymond Green who know exactly like how much one guy is going to shade over and when the guard's going to bail and when the big needs to step up and how much the big needs to step up and like how far the guard can come back over on a backside contest. And it feels like Grimes and Mitch, despite, I don't know, like, I mean, this season, maybe playing 100 minutes, probably not even that, probably like 40 minutes together all year long. They seem like really, like I was like in that first half against Luka in particular, it felt like Grimes did such a good job just shading him to the exact right amount of space where Mitch could cover, but still recover before Luka could throw a lob. And Luka's a genius. So sometimes he got them, but I don't know. They seem that's really impressed me so far.
Yeah, they're legitimately like a good defensive duo. Like the way they're able, like Mitchell Robinson always buys time for Grimes to recover if he needs it, and then Grimes is always fighting back to recover so that Mitchell Robinson isn't on an island for too long. It's like a perfect, like the way you described it as a dance. I think it's perfect. They're kind of in stride together, always in step. And I think other than the Luka game, the one that really stood out with those two was against Ja Morant and the Grizzlies. They really made his life tough, and it was just a lot of fun to watch. I think their chemistry defensively is like one of the most under talked about things so far this season because I think it's legitimately good.
Yeah, it's a rare positive in a season where we haven't had a lot. And for Mitch, I mean, I hate to make this analogy, but sometimes I almost feel like he's like an animal who's like gotten abused, like where he's never gotten the ball offensively his whole career. Like defensively, he's been left out to dry over and over and over again. And it's just like, it's like this great boon for him. He's kind of like, he's like perking up. He's like, oh, I'm being treated well. Like I'm getting help. Like you care. Like this is amazing. Like I'm going to go all out. This is fantastic. And I feel like Brunson does that for him offensively, where he actually throws him lobs when he's wide open. I think Grimes does that for him defensively, where he's like, hey, I got your back. You're not alone in this 2-on-1. Like I'm going to come back in and help you out. And like, and it honestly, like, it's a credit to Mitch that he almost hasn't developed more bad habits playing like in that context his whole life. But like, I'm kind of just excited for him that I almost feel like he's a new like lease on life playing with Grimes.
It's got to feel like a breath of fresh air for him to have like a guard who's actually like actively trying to fight over screens. I think he gets a little bit with Quickly, but I don't think he really plays that much with Quickly as well. So I think, you know, Grimes, that duo, like I think Thibodeau has something in those two where he can legitimately like, he knows that whoever he puts Grimes on, it's gonna be difficult on that guy, and I don't think he's had that at least the past like season, especially last season. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I guess this leads into the final part of the question. And it was what would the Knicks' best overall defensive lineup be? So for me, I kind of made a conglomeration of the first two. Though you could certainly just go with the defensive rebounding one. I had IQ, Deuce, Grimes, Reddish, and Mitch, and my only concern there is just like you're undersized at almost every spot, but I just think the collective IQ there, like Reddish maybe occasionally would have a brain fart, but no one's really out of place. And with Mitch, you have someone who can cover up for a lot of stuff. Like there are teams like the Bucks where that it just doesn't work because Giannis would just mow through them. But all in all, I think against most teams that essentially play a wing at power forward, like that could be pretty interesting. But what was your version of that?
It was actually the same, but just to switch it up for the question, I'll go with Sims over Robinson, and I think you can just go massive switching, just whatever action, just switch. I think it would be fun to just watch those five guys fly around the perimeter, and I think they'd force a bunch of turnovers, which I think the Knicks defense hasn't been good at either. And they'd benefit from having just guys who are athletes and engaged and locked in defensively all the time. So yeah, I'll switch it up and I'll go with Sims at the 5.
I'm feeling good that we're locked in on this. All right. And then what was the final question, which I'll throw your way, is what do you think the Knicks' best offensive lineup would be?
This one was tough. I was fighting a lot with myself to come up with a good answer for this. But the one I settled on is Brunson, Quickly, Grimes, Obi, and Julius. And I'm pretty sure ours are going to be different.
Dude, no, we got the same one.
Is it really? Wow.
Yeah. I wrote it down. I can send it to you after. But yeah, I think that's clear cut to me because I think you need. I don't think RJ belongs in there right now. I don't think Cam belongs in there right now the way he's playing. You get the shooting of IQ and Grimes off of Brunson, like Obi, like the way he's shot this year, like provides some. Like, I mean, you're legitimately 4 or 5 out. Julius has an open lane to rampage down. I love the idea of Brunson just being able to run like kind of like empty, like pick and rolls with Obi or Julius. Like, I don't know. I mean, to me, that like on paper, that could be that's basically like kind of similar to what the Kings are doing this year in terms of their lineup construction. Maybe with even less rim protection somehow, but I think that's the kind of that could be a top 3 offense in the NBA. What would happen defensively? Who knows? But offensively, would be a lot of fun. All right, guys. In just a sec, I want to get into a very interesting and holiday-themed question: which players have haunted the Knicks, are currently haunting the Knicks, and which players? This is a scary one. Will eventually haunt the New York Knicks. But first, BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional sport and amateur league out there, from pro football to college basketball to the World Cup. We've got it all at BetOnline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info, and that includes the latest NBA odds. Tomorrow night, I'm looking this up as we speak, the New Orleans Pelicans are just 2-point favorites over the Utah Jazz. I'm taking the Pelicans, man. They are playing as well as any team in the NBA right now. So if you want to join me, head to the website today or use your mobile website to learn more. BetOnline, it's where the game starts.
I think it's just that it's a very fun and good mix of like spacing, playmaking, and shooting. Especially if Grimes and Quickly are shooting at the level that we know they can shoot at. And I think I just trust the decision making of that group, like collectively. Yeah, and I think there's enough off ball movement too, which I think the Knicks struggle with. But with Obi and Grimes, there's enough cutting there that I like that fit as a 5.
And a rare lineup where there's actually open space to cut into for both of them, exactly. Right? And especially lately, those two have been making hay, and Brunson is really good passing out of those situations. And honestly, Julius has been much better this year, like passing and hitting cutters too. So that maybe we'll see it one day, probably with a new head coach. All right. Our last question. It's a loaded one. It comes from Bugsy Sig at Bugsy Sig. Always one of our favorites. And he's a little Christmas theme here. Ghosts of Knicksmas Past, present and future. Who is haunted, is haunting, and will haunt the Knicks. So I don't celebrate Christmas. So I didn't, maybe I'm lost on the Ghosts of Christmas Past theme here. But I did come up with some answers to this. But Ariel, I want to hear yours first. Let's start with haunted. Like who are the ghosts of Knicks past that are still haunting your dreams a little bit?
This one it was tough because there's a lot of options you can go with. You can go with players, you can go with front office, you can go with coaches. So I just went with Phil Jackson just because I thought the way that tenure ended was just gross and it was a lot of bad taste in your mouth afterwards. If you want to go like farther down the road, I tried to keep it recent. But if you want to go like farther down the road, I think like Isaiah Thomas is up there.
Yeah.
I went with Phil though. That's who I went with.
Yeah, I think there's so many ways you can go with this one. I mean, you could look at it like just stars they missed out on, like Steph Curry, Jamal Murray, John Morant, guys. I mean, most of those weren't even Knicks. I mean, Murray was a Knicks mistake, but most of them weren't even Knicks mistakes. They were just like guys they just missed on. I'm with you on Isaiah Thomas. I just had like some randos in there. I wrote down Emmanuel Mudiay and Alonzo Trier and Kevin Knox just because like that was the first year I covered the Knicks full time, and it was so dismal. And like, I mean, as bad as things are now, like I think it would be good for me to like just Clockwork Orange style, like pin my eyes open and watch 40 minutes of like David Fizdale Knicks and be like, all right, it could be worse. It could be worse.
That's just torture.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy that team got like obviously the year where they got RJ, but they had the other year where they got the 8th pick in the draft. I mean, I guess that year they made a switch, but to like halfway through the year and finished a little bit stronger. But man, like it would have like all of Fizdale would have been worth it if they could have gotten Lucas somehow. Of course, they probably would have just passed up on him. The 2 other final guys I had in there were Frank Ntilikina, just because to me he represented the lone like hope of that era, and it was always kind of like a lost hope that obviously never came to fruition with the Knicks, and it hasn't really come to fruition in a major way with another team. And then I just threw in Andrea Bargnani for good measure, because I think he is the epitome of all the bad moves they've made in the last 20 years. Like that is, of course, that was the kind of guy that they would be into buying on. For haunting, maybe this is controversial, but I have Julius Randle and sadly RJ Barrett. But who do you have for haunting?
Wow. Okay, I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
I went with Tom Thibodeau. I think he's
Okay.
genuinely. I think he's holding back the roster. I don't think this roster is like second round ceiling, but I definitely think the development of most of the young guys is being hampered right now.
Hmm. That is the correct answer. I think Julius belongs in that mix just for. I think he haunts the Knicks with his lack of effort sometimes, and I think we occasionally underrate like just how much that probably hurts team morale when it's nominally your best or second best guy, and again like the guy who was the face of the franchise. And I I think there's a case to be made. RJ's done the same thing offensively this year where like, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure like me, like you've at much lower levels, but you play basketball your whole life. And it's tough when you have one guy who's taking a lot of shots and missing a lot of shots. And I imagine over 80 games with a lot of pressure and also that being someone they probably all really like and respect. Like, I just can't imagine how tricky that dynamic is.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's too early for me to go that harsh on RJ. I think me personally, I'm giving him some time to kind of figure things out. I haven't been too harsh on him for the most part. But I don't hate it. I do think the struggles because when RJ struggles, like it's bad. It's not just like rough. It feels like, I don't know how to explain it. It just feels heavy. So I get it. I just can't get there yet personally.
That's fair. I didn't feel. I felt a little sick writing it. All right. Let me throw it to you. Ghosts of Knicks future. Who will haunt the Knicks down the road?
All right, I'm probably cheating here, but I went with Tom Thibodeau again. I think his use of the younger guys like IQ, Obi, and Cam in particular, those three, I think it's gonna make it really difficult. And it's twofold. I think it's gonna make it difficult for the Knicks to be able to kind of gauge them, like their value in terms of like extending them if they do want to extend it. And then I also think that he's hurting their value like in trades for a future star. And I think we kind of saw some of that this summer with the whole Donovan Mitchell fiasco. So I definitely think Thibodeau. I'm gonna go with him again.
Yeah, I think you could even extend that and maybe throw Leon Rose in there, which again feels harsh in the sense that like a lot of stuff he's done is good. I say it every time I critique the guy. I think this is the healthiest the Knicks have been in as an organization in 22 years, pretty much. But his lack of willingness to move off of Tibbs out of like a misplaced sense of loyalty and maybe some self-preservation is I mean, it's getting to the point of malpractice when we saw there, like, you would think it would be clearer to Leon Rose than anyone else on planet Earth how Tibbs has damaged this franchise by not turning those young guys into trade assets and their value probably not being equivalent to what it should be. And simultaneously, and this part's harder because obviously he's been a hard guy to deal, but hamstringing Tibbs by not trading Julius Randle, where he always kind of has that to fall back on. And in Tibbs' defense, like obviously it would be hard to bench Julius Randle full stop and play Obi Toppin those minutes. And in turn, I threw in those like three guys you mentioned, Obi, Cam, and I also had Isaiah Hartenstein in there as guys who I think could come back to haunt the Knicks down the road, because Hartenstein, as you've noted, as many have noted, just not being used properly. Obi, I could see it going one of two ways, where he either eventually shines on another team in another context and the Knicks are like, man, we should have made something of him. Or like I think what's honestly the sadder way, and I really hope doesn't happen because he seems like a fantastic person and I'm always going to root for him. I could see a world where like the Knicks have like irreparably like damaged his confidence and didn't really let him develop his strengths as a rim runner. And I think there could be a case of him like not really having an identity down the road on another team.
Yeah, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. He's been relegated to like he's shooting over half of his shot attempts are 3-pointers now, which is clearly not his game. I think it's definitely, you see it when you watch him play. He's not being put in positions like to his strength. So it's definitely concerning. That's definitely like the worst outcome possible for him, and I think for the Knicks. But I just think that the decision not to move on from Tom Thibodeau, it's the longer they let it go on, the worse it's going to be.
I'm sorry to end a very fun podcast on such a pessimistic note, but Ariel, as always, you've been an amazing guest. One final time, just in case anyone missed in the first episode, can you let everyone know where they can find all your great work?
Yeah, so just follow me on Twitter at Pacheco NBA. Anything I do there will be there. So just follow me on Twitter and you can keep up to date with me.
All right, I say it every time you're on there, but I always learn something, and I think people can always learn something by going and checking you out on Twitter. No more consistent observer on this team out there. Constant film breakdowns after every single game. He's an absolute must follow. It's APACHECO NBA on Twitter. Ariel, thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you soon.